I was recently in a room where the ticket to entry was a net worth of 30 million. What's interesting is that every single person in that room had had the same first question. And the answer to that question is, I believe, the reason that most people struggle to get ahead. So the room that I was in Dubai, and it was an organization that brings together ultra high net worth individuals. Now, high net worth means that you have a few $1 million, and that might seem like a stretch, but actually there's lots and lots of people in the world that have reached that standard already. The next level up is what's known as ultra high net worth, and that is typically $30 million or above. The third level is billionaires. Of course, we're all familiar with that. It's an incredible amount of wealth, and very few people achieve that. There's about 3,500 individuals on the planet that have achieved that net worth. Now, this particular organization brings together people that have ultra high net worth and above, so 30 million and above. And the reason that they pick that number is that typically you can be quite wealthy, you can be high net worth, and still not really be very different from your neighbors and those people around you. Once you get into the rarefied air of ultra high net worth, and there's a few 100,000 of these people in the world, what you discover is that your world and your problems are very different from the majority of the rest of the planet. Now, you might think, what problems do you have at that level? Well, actually, of course, everyone has problems. They're different. But the organization that was putting together this meeting recognized that ultra high net worths and above typically have the same four kind of main things that they're focused on. One is wealth creation. So how do you continue to create wealth? Second is wealth retention, which is very, very important. You don't want to build your wealth and then lose it. Third one is philanthropy, and you find that all people that have reached that level are now focused on how they give back effectively. And the fourth one is family. So most people that have reached that level, oftentimes they came from a poor background. They were driven, they were hungry, and they're terrified of their children who grow up with everything not having that same drive and that same hunger. So these are very real problems. They're very real problems that if you try to discuss them with somebody that is struggling on minimum wage, they're not going to be able to relate. And so this organization brings those people together. I was in that room to meet with some of those people. Now, what was really interesting, the CEO of the organization from the US had flown to Dubai to meet with us all. I was in from Singapore. And there was an individual in the room that hadn't yet joined the organization. And the question that they asked, I thought was very, very revealing. Now, before I tell you that question, I need to give you some context. So when you join this organization, so I mentioned you need to have around 30 million in disposable assets in order to join. If you think about it, of course, there's also people that have 300 million or 3 billion in assets that join. But most people that join are at that entry level. So they're at around 30 million. And the reason is that that's the point where they start to realize they're very different from those people around them. And they want to meet other people like them and see how other people have solved the problems that they are now coming across. So the majority of people looking to join this organization are at that 30 million point. The question that they all ask is, what could I possibly contribute to a group like this? Now, that might seem bizarre that somebody with a net worth of 30 million still has that insecurity to think that what could they possibly contribute, but they realize that they are on the bottom of the rung within this group. And so that insecurity that we all have carries on. And I'm actually going to do another video about the way successful people deal with insecurity in a way that most people don't deal with it. So before we go any further, I want to cover off why that is such an interesting and important question. And there's three key areas that I think are key to understand. The first is consistency. So everybody in that room knew the one question that everybody asks. And what's kind of interesting is that you've got people from very, very disparate backgrounds. But once they'd reached that level, they were all asking the same question. So isn't it kind of interesting that mindsets all kind of evolve to this certain level? That was it, first point. The second point was that question was not around what's in it for me. It was about their contribution to the group. How could I possibly contribute to a group like this? So they're not thinking in terms of what's in it for them. And by the way, this is an organization that costs around $30,000 a year to be a part of. You have to give up at least 9 full days a year, which is a huge ask for somebody that's running a business, got a family, got a lot of other ways to spend their time. So it's a big commitment when people join. And yet the question wasn't about what do I get out of this? The question was about what can I bring to this? And that's the really key important point. And it brings me on to the third piece of this, which is around how our minds evolve. And this is what I think holds most people back. So if you think about it, when we start as a baby, as a child, we are completely self-obsessed, right? We need everyone else around us to survive. We can only think about ourselves, and adults spend a lot of time trying to teach us to share and all of those kind of things. But fundamentally, we're focused on ourselves. Now, unfortunately, some people never grow out of that, but most mature people, as they grow, they start to care more about their friends. As they develop families, they put their families first. And so it's really about the size of the promise you make. If you're just in everything for yourself, your promise is, this is all for me. Everything that I do, every conversation that I go into is about what can I get out of that. That's a very small promise. If your promise becomes like most people in the world, what can I get out of this for me and my family? That's a slightly bigger promise, but most people never evolve beyond that. Great leaders all ask a much, much bigger, or make a much, much bigger promise. So if you think about people like Nelson Mandela, his promise was to all of the people of South Africa and then Africa. People like Gandhi, his promise was to all of the people of India. Mother Teresa, all of people who are impoverished. That was her aim, was to help them out of poverty. And so what you find is that all great leaders have this mindset of putting a bigger cause ahead of themselves. And where that comes from is shifting from a space of scarcity, which is what you have as a baby. Oh my God, I need everything. I'm hungry. I need food now, to a place of abundance. And what you find, that word gets massively overused, but the reality is that anyone that's reached a level of high success knows that there's tons of money out there in the world. There's more money than there's ever been printed in the history of the planet floating around. There's more talented individuals out there than there's ever been. There's so much opportunity. There's so much abundance. You don't get that abundance by asking what's in it for me. You get that abundance by seeing how you can create value in the world. The more value you create in the world, the more you get back. And what's interesting is this is not just about this particular room and this particular event. Those people will constantly be asking that question, what can I contribute? So I run a $100 million fund here in Singapore. I'm constantly talking to investors. And the questions that they ask are often, what more could I do? Yes, I'll invest in your fund, but what more could I do to help this be successful? They want to know how they can contribute. Whereas people that are struggling financially, if they invest in something, it's all like, when am I going to get my returns? How quickly can you report? Like, can I take this money back out if I need it? It's very much about them rather than about what they can contribute. So I found that incredibly interesting that such a diverse group from all over the world were all asking the same ideas about contribution. And I want to leave you with this one thought. They didn't get successful and then start thinking, what can I contribute? They got successful because their mindset was, I need to show up and contribute first. So if you take that mindset and just today, just throughout the rest of today, think, how can I contribute something first? It might be a comment below this video. It might be saying something nice to somebody. It might be that you go and share some of your knowledge with people on LinkedIn or whatever social media platform that would help somebody that's a few years below you. Just start thinking in terms of contribution first and not worrying about what you get back out of it. And you will be putting yourself in the rarefied air of very, very successful people. I hope you found that useful, and I look forward to hearing how you get on.